me being from an engineering, automotive, lean background already. And what I encountered in these hospitals, I felt it actually to be horrible. I had stomach aches and headaches, and I was anxious. And this all while I wasn't even the patient. Those experiences led me to believe that there was a lot to learn in healthcare about how to build in quality into everything you do. Doctors and nurses can do amazing things for people, but they forgot that they can only deliver amazing things when they have an excellent process as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth Swan.
And I'm Tracy O'Rourke, and we're from the Just in Time Cafe. Welcome to our podcast. At the cafe, we wrestle with tough questions, talk to groundbreakers, discuss great books, and get insights from Lean Six Sigma practitioners who are making a difference in this world.
We let you in on helpful apps, we bring you the news, and we challenge the status quo so you can build your problem-solving muscles.
So Elizabeth, what's on the cafe menu today?
Tracy, today's highlight is our interview with the Lean practitioner Arnout Orelio, where we discuss his new book, Lean Thinking for Emerging Healthcare Leaders. Healthcare is slightly different in the Netherlands, but the remedies he cites are completely applicable in the US. For hot apps, we spotlight a super basic digital whiteboard that lets you collaborate with remote teams. And for Q&A, we asked our community about giving others credit. It's often what people care most about, so why doesn't it happen enough? And so, Tracy, I'm going to give you credit right now. You deserve it.
Well, thank you. I will take it. Up next is hot apps.
Yes, this app is Google's Jamboard. And it's kind of a low-rent version of Mural or Miro or some other digital whiteboard. Simple and free. What'd you think, Tracy?
Well, I do like whiteboards a great deal, especially with virtual and remote teams. This one is especially nice because it's free. And since I do use Google Apps a lot, it's really easy just to go to my Google Drive and start using Jamboard. So it has a lot of the same features that I'm very familiar with. I'm going to be honest and say I use Mural the most out of all three, Miro, Mural, and Jamboard. But I did notice that it has very similar features. I'm sure you're going to probably speak to that as well. But I think it's a great tool.
Yeah. And what's hilarious, you put it on our list. I was like, oh, good. I'll check out this Jamboard that Tracy wants me to look at. And so I was like, oh, it's new to me. And then I searched it and I immediately found the Jamboard that we used for Lean Coffee. We had Eric Olson visit the cafe. So I didn't recognize its name for some reason, but I've clearly used it. So it is really basic, which is a huge appeal, and it's free, which should also appeal to everybody. And it is a digital whiteboard, but without the bells and whistles of something like your favorite and mine, Mural. You get to it by going to Google and selecting apps, right? And you can use it inside Google Meets, right? So there's nice pairing there if you use Google Meets for your meetings. I found the Lean Coffee Kanban board, like I said, when I did the searching, and it had our Post-its on it with ideas for conversation, classic, columns. It had topics discussing, right? What topics were we discussing? And done, we finished those topics, and epiphanies. That was it's new for a Kanban board. It's kind of fun. So, all right, so it is basic, right? So there's a pen. If you press it and you hold it, you can have different types of pens, right? You could have regular, thicker, you could have a highlighter, and you could change the color. You could doodle, you could draw. That's nice to have, right? So a little creativity there. There's an eraser. You and I both need erasers. You can switch back to a cursor so that you're, moving stuff if you want to. You can use sticky notes, right? You and I are big fans of digital and real Post-it notes. So you could change the color. You could move it around once you've created it, and you can edit it. You can add pictures. I kind of like this. It reminds me a little bit of the mural feature where you can go in and look at pictures and, type in like Cape Cod, like I did, and immediately got a lighthouse, which was 10 minutes from my house. And you could go there and search in, dinosaur, pop it right in. Basic shapes. You've got your circle, your square, all the basics and arrows. And you could create those and then give them color, right? They've got some fill. There's a text box, another basic, cool. What I kind of like the most, which I'd not seen before in the other apps, is this laser pointer. And so you click on that and it will draw like a red laser and then disappear. So it's a little bit classy. It's kind of new and I like that. Just calling attention to whatever the heck you're doing. The other thing I like is, you can change the background, stuff like that. In terms of what your whiteboard looks like, you could give it a grid or dots. You can also download your work. You could turn that into a PDF. And then, of course, essential, you could share the link to your Jamboard with everybody you want to work with. And I did that. I went in to look at who we shared the Jamboard with. And the only person left in there was Mark Graben. I was like, Mark still has access to this Jamboard. So thanks for picking this one, Tracy, and throwing it on the list. I totally appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we love virtual whiteboards. They're our jam, and Google Jamboards can be your jam.
I'm Elizabeth Swan, and you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast. In a short while, you get to hear our interview with Arnout Orelio, all the way from the Netherlands. Next up, it's an issue that resonates across all industries. The question of how do you make people feel appreciated? And this one started for me. I talked to someone, a female colleague, and she said, why should I encourage my workers? No one ever encouraged me. And I was like, what? Like, what is causing you to say that? That sounds so horrible. And she had succeeded in a field that was predominantly male, and she won impressive worldwide contracts. And she built just a formidable organization. But I was like, why do you feel that way? And she said, I had to struggle. Nobody gave me praise, and people took credit for my work all the time. And so I want the people in my firm, I want the women in my firm to grow thick skins, right? And not expect praise, and to be immune to criticism, right? And I thought, okay, you're defined by your struggles. That's true. But what is this withholding praise or credit? Like, what, is that something we should be doing? And some people just, they're too busy, or they're just unaware that people did stuff. Maybe they feel like, hey, we're paying you for a great job. That's affirmation. And, there's also a whole kind of movement out there that kind of bucks that whole everyone deserves a trophy syndrome. And so people feel like, I'm not going to just say great job, and that's just too much, right? We're acknowledging too much. But, that's a problematic way to go, because it's really, there's research out there, right? Daniel Pink, the guy that wrote Drive, he tapped into research that showed, credit is more important than money to a lot of people. Being seen, appreciated, respected is so huge that people will do things for free. And he points to Wikipedia as one thing that people do without compensation. So, the thing I get stuck on is it's not a luxury. It doesn't cost anything, right? To say nice work simply means you're paying attention. So I don't know. How about you, Tracy? What do you do when it comes to praising others?
Well, I attended a workshop, the Leadership Challenge, and it talks about encouraging the heart as one of the primary leadership responsibilities. And it's interesting how many people struggle with this, and part of encouraging the heart is praise. And when we start to really dig back through the root causes, we heard people say, well, I'm not good at compliments, or I feel fake. I feel like I'm faking it when I give people a compliment. And I think that, what's interesting about that is, truly appreciating others builds humility, first of all. It makes you appreciate others and be grateful for it. And it does help good relationships. But when you think you're not good at it, I think what's interesting is some people say, well, I have to be fake. No, that is not what we're saying. Do not be fake. You better, if you're going to praise somebody, it better be genuine. Do not fake it, because that is worse. People are going to recognize that you are not being truthful, you're not being genuine, and it's going to backfire. People are going to see right through you. So we're not asking you to be fake. We're asking you to fine tune your ability to find something that you are genuinely being positive about. You actually do have to try to find something that you're genuinely happy or grateful for. And so really you need to do that. And it's just really interesting how this can be hard for people. It's not hard for me. And so I think I do praise people, and I try to be very specific. It's not just generalizations around praise, but very specific things that I appreciate. And to me, it just helps me appreciate people more by being specific. And but it's really interesting, some of the challenges people face around praise.
That is a huge eye opener, Tracy. I hadn't thought about people thinking they're not good at it. I definitely feel that it's important not to be fake about it. Don't say things you don't believe. But I think you ended on the reality of it, which is there's work involved. You've got to actually pay attention and figure out what it is that you do appreciate about somebody. So there's a pause, there's some time in there. So that's interesting. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's just
one.
like a muscle.
Yeah.
The more you do it, the better you get at it, like anything.
Yeah.
And I think if you recognize it as such, you recognize, okay, maybe your muscle's not very strong here. Don't let it atrophy more.
No. And you are good at it. You're wonderful at it. And I think you also have to sort of get over, like, you need to make that habit regardless of what other people do. Like, you might suddenly think, man, I always give credit. How come I'm not getting credit? Like, don't let that stop you. Just realize that you're setting the stage. You're being a model. We put this out to the community. I got a good response from leadership impact coach Sunitha Narayanan, and she believes that each of us has a yearning to belong, right? And to especially do work that matters and serves, the greater good. So she observes in her coaching work that some clients are unable to find out, how their daily work connects to the overall vision of the organization. So appreciating people creates that opportunity to recognize meaning in someone's life, including work, right? So kudos helps create the human moments and goodwill. And, all work, if it's sustaining, is done with and through people. So she finds that is another way to connect people to what they're doing. So she says she likes asking people how they wish to be recognized, which I like. And that kind of responds to what you're talking about, Tracy, which is, I feel fake. Well, ask people how they want to be recognized, right? So people have different styles, and you can take a moment to figure out, how people receive recognition. And then there's always, say thank you, write a note, call out work. So you can get creative with it. And I like that. Thank you, Sunitha.
So here's another take from VP and co-founder of Joint Pivot, Jennifer Tankenow. She was talking with a client about how Peloton and safe driving apps have people coming back for more because of free badges that you win from working out or working hard or driving safely. And she admits she totally sucked into both of these programs. However, there's no need to invest money in an app. Saying thank you, congrats, and public praise is free. So make a sticky note and make it part of your daily routine. Thank you, Jennifer.
I know Jennifer's a colleague, and that's a wonderful idea. Just make it part of your daily routine. And then I got one last one from our colleague, Evans Kerrigan, who's co-founder, CEO of Integris Performance Advisors, which I think takes us full circle back to the leadership challenge that you were talking about. So he says, if you don't recognize people when they do good work, how much less will they hear you if you need to offer something other than praise? So if you make a practice of catching people doing things right, you're able to show how everyone contributes. With people facing issues we may never know about, giving praise also allows us to sometimes be just the positive note someone needs in their day. I like that. I love that, catching someone doing something right. That's awesome. So great wisdom from our crowd. Thanks again.
Yes, join the conversation. We'll leave you a link if you've got some ideas you'd like to share as well. I'm Tracy O'Rourke, and you're listening to the Just in Time Cafe podcast. We host these monthly, so you can go to jitcafe.com, that's JITCAFE.com, and go to our podcast page.
Coming up next, it's our featured guest, Arnout Orelio. He's our first Dutch guest. Tracy, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Arnout?
I'd love to. So I really enjoyed getting to know him because he is our first Dutch guest, and he is captivating and thought-provoking speaker in the field of lean healthcare management, and obviously based in the Netherlands. Arnout has a proven track record as a lean coach, and he's helped hundreds of medical professionals become the best versions of themselves. And boy, do we want the best version of themselves in healthcare, right? Creating peak performances and applying lean principles. So I love that. Arnout's focus is helping physicians and nurses and leaders in particular, making more time for better healthcare. And guess what? He knows so much about this. He wrote a book coming out at the end of this year titled Lean Thinking for Emerging Healthcare Leaders: How to Develop Yourself and Implement Process Improvements. We are psyched to have him at the cafe.
Hello and welcome, Arnout. Thank you for coming to us live from Helmond in the Netherlands. It's awesome to have you at the cafe.
Well, thank you for having me.
And of course, we are here and excited about your book that's coming out. This is an area of process improvement that Tracy and I are involved in and deeply passionate about. So we wanted to know, first off, tell us, how did you become involved in addressing problems in healthcare?
So that's indeed quite a story. It's already been quite a while. I started my work focusing on healthcare in 2005. So quite a long while ago. And there were actually several things going on at the time. First of all, I'm a parent of 3 sons. And I explained to people, when you have sons, well, you get to a hospital from time to time. So unavoidable to avoid any responsibility for that. And what I encountered in these hospitals, me being from an engineering, automotive, lean background already, I was a consultant at the time, I felt it actually to be horrible. As an experience. I had stomach aches and headaches, and I was anxious, and this all while I wasn't even the patient. So that was one of those experiences left me to believe that there was a lot to learn in healthcare about how to build in quality into everything you do. Whereas we like to believe that, of course, because healthcare is so important, we think it's all about quality. And it is when it's about the content of the work. So we can, doctors and nurses can do amazing things for people. But they forgot that they can only deliver amazing things when they have an excellent process as well. And as an engineer, that's what my first experience in healthcare were. The processes were not that good, not as good as the people were. And another thing that happened is that at the time, it was a new thing for healthcare to have people from other sectors come and look about what they maybe can learn from each other. And one of the researchers was a president from Shell, the oil company, about patient safety. And he used the materials from the Institute of Medicine. I think it's called To Err is Human. And so he extrapolated those results to what he experienced in Dutch healthcare. And he came about the same numbers, that we kill approximately several thousand people each year due to bad processes in healthcare. So this was another thing, that there was an issue. This confirmed what I already thought was true. And on the positive side, I was approached by a woman who was working in we call it people with intellectual disabilities, and she was actually looking for quality improvement methods, and she didn't find anything in healthcare. So healthcare relied on itself for all these years, while they were not actually methodical about improving quality, and in this case, quality of the process. So that left her in her studies with people like Deming and Duran, and she found his ideas and his name on our website, because I was working at a lean consultancy at the time. So she approached me and she said, "Do you think that what you do, could that work in healthcare?" And my answer was, of course, why not? Because I'm an engineer, so I'm a system thinker. So I don't believe that the content of the work determines whether something can work or not.
I do have a question for you. So now that
you're
in healthcare, and I experienced the same as you, there was, when I first started helping in healthcare, there seemed to be a higher resistance to embracing people and specialists outside of healthcare. And they kept saying, we're different. And, there is different applications that do apply. For example, I help government, and there's certain cultural barriers and challenges I see in government. So now that you're in it and you've been helping healthcare and you've written a book about it as well, what challenges have you seen that are primarily in healthcare, if any?
So, yes, healthcare is different, but not for the reasons that many people think, or at least not the reasons that healthcare think they're different. And one thing is this thinking about being different. And it has to do with the fact that in healthcare, still everything is about the content of the work. And that leads to some extra creation of silos. And these silos are not only departments, but they're silos of discipline. So because each doctor has a particular discipline, like, I don't know, a neurosurgeon, or maybe he's a pediatrician. And then within this specialty, the group of doctors have another specialty within their specialty. Like my neurologist, he's working a lot of patients with, like me, with migraines, but some other neurologist doesn't know anything or less about migraines. And the problem with that is that not necessarily that they are so specialized, but there's no counter movement for integrating all these people with all their knowledge into a process that helps the patient get from their issues to, well, a better life.
That reminds me of the issues in the construction industry, because it's specialists, right? These are the people that are going to pour the foundation. These are the people that are going to bring in the walls. These are people doing fine job. Now they're all specialists, and you're trying to get them all to work together to bring it from the idea of a building to a building. And I think as a patient, you feel it too with specialists in healthcare, right? If you go to a surgeon, guess what? You need surgery.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yes, and in the construction industry, interestingly, they solved it by doing project management. So at least they have some kind of management.
Yeah.
But in healthcare, they didn't solve it with project management, and they didn't solve it with process management either. So there's no one responsible for the patient getting the full treatment.
From end to end.
Yeah. So at least in construction, when something goes wrong, you know who to call.
Right. There's a project manager. You're right.
Yeah. So you can always call, and even the people who do the windows or the painting or the carpenters, they know that you should go to him.
Whereas
and then he gets back to them to solve the problem, probably. So it's not the most efficient, but at least as a client, you know who to call when you have a problem.
there's accountability. Whereas it seems like healthcare is a series of handoffs, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that means that I have been the victim of a medical error, and I felt that I was the case manager for this process done wrong. So not necessarily for the results, because I had a paralyzed arm. Luckily, it's working again. But so there's neurologists that research the arm, etc. But the fact that that my process went wrong twice, that's nobody's responsibility. So, and then we get to what makes healthcare different. There seems no responsibility with management.
So
they're separated from the actual process. So management is only there to manage the budget. So there's no connection between the people managing the work, the people doing the work, and people that supposedly manage the work. The work is not managed.
Are there inroads you found to address that disconnect? Yeah,
and the most effective way to do that is if you can get there's several ways. One way would be to disrupt leadership, and what I mean is that you work with a healthcare worker, like a doctor or a physician or a nurse, and you empower them to take the lead to improve the process as a whole. And that means that you need some, at least management should be okay with it, not necessarily involved, but at least when they can, because they left it alone already. So if they still leave it alone, but the nurse gets to do what she needs to do to make it better, that could work. But of course, then you still have this layer of, thinking and doing, let's say. And the other thing is that you take middle managers or maybe even better put team leaders with leadership capabilities, because they have already some kind of authority in the organization. So they are probably better suited than an individual nurse or doctor to bring a group together and have them improve a process. And this could at least give you some kind of start. So, but it depends. Preferably, of course, we want lean transformation, but
we don't always get it.
Yeah, we hardly ever get it. I think the numbers tell us, but so I think that's and that's also how my books, maybe to put a bit of a link. So the book which is coming out now is actually telling you from a leadership perspective. I think that lean transformation is no more than a leadership development system. So if you're able, from wherever part of the organization, to make an oil spot, and then not an oil spot of lean tools or improvement projects, but an oil spot of new leadership. Then, because if I'm a team leader and I have multiple, maybe in healthcare, many team leaders have multiple teams, which is terrible for their span of support, but okay, it is what it is. But the advantage is that they can take one team and experiment, and then they go to the next team, and then they have learned already quite some. So they are better able to help the next team. And then the next thing is they start something with their colleague team leader and their boss, like the I don't know, a business unit manager, or depends on how you organize. And then this team of team leaders and business unit manager, they start learning about leadership and how to spread it. And then, of course, because this business unit manager have multiple team leaders, they can spread it. I think it's a bit like, I think it's the Henry Ford Health System in Detroit, where there's you could say a pocket of lean transformation by this, the head of the laboratory. I forgot his name, sorry, to look him up, but so, and his whole, everything which is under his responsibility, he has built a whole new culture, whereas in some other parts of the same system, they're not yet at that place. So that could be a way to not always look up and wait for the manager to change. That's something that maybe in healthcare they do a bit more than, at least in the Netherlands, I see a lot of posts. If you look on LinkedIn, many people blame the government or the executives for the problems on the shop floor. And they might be right. But the issue is they also ask them to solve them. Yeah. And that's where it goes wrong, because then they solve the problems. And then, of course, the nurses and the doctors say, this won't work. Clearly, you don't have any understanding of how it is here.
Yeah.
So yes, that's so. Arnout, yeah. you have a book coming out.
Yeah.
Geared towards emerging healthcare leaders. And my question to you is, you do mention meta skills in the book and how you can expand on those skills. But what skills, can you tell us a little bit, a sneak peek potentially about what are some of these skills that leaders, you're really looking to develop in leaders and see more of in healthcare?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is that they start to understand that healthcare is teamwork. And not necessarily the groups that we currently call teams. Because a team to me is a group of people with a shared purpose. But many teams are just in healthcare are just nurses, or they're discipline based. And often they're so big that they can't be a team because, well, they would be each other's obstacle, you could say. They would that won't work. So I think that multidisciplinary leadership, that knowing that it's teamwork and that it asks for a joint purpose, and it's very easy to find this joint purpose because you're just wondering what the patients need, and then you're wondering how are we going to give it to the patient. And then after that, you're going to ask, okay, what disciplines do we need? And currently we do it the other way around. Currently, the patient is saying, these are my complaints, or I have pain here and there and there. And then they break up the patient and they send them to different parts of the hospital or of the health system to make sure that somebody looks at the eyes, because maybe vision is not okay, and then somebody else is looking at maybe the mental health or whatever. So I think that's the leadership we need. We need the leadership that patients are sure that they're taken care of as a whole.
You know, it's so fascinating because it touches on two things you mentioned. One is it's very easy to have a shared purpose, as you're saying, because the customer is in front of you, right? So in a lot of the other industries you've worked in, Tracy and I've worked in, we don't even see them. We're deep inside of a silo, and somewhere down the line, there's a customer experiencing a service or a product. But here they are right in front of you. So being that mission-driven team is a much easier thing to accomplish. And I think about, you mentioned earlier, seeing people from other disciplines come into healthcare. So I worked a lot in hospitality, working with hotels. And I've seen some of the people I trained show up in hospitals I'm working with. And I think, oh, so you're getting people in and out of beds with a slightly different sense of urgency. But in hospitality, it's very clear you want that guest to have a beautiful experience while they're there, right? So now a patient, you want that patient to come out whole. So being a team, like you said, would have a huge impact. I really love that.
Yes, and I think you touch on something else, which healthcare is maybe not different, but maybe behind, because they think they're unique and everything needs to be tailored. They fail to see that many of the issues and the problems they have been solved already. I mean, hospitality has been solved, or having the information at the right time, at the right place, without anybody else accessing it, but the people who need to, is already solved. It's called banking. When I went in the 90s to Singapore, where did I go? I went to Peru, and I put this plastic card into a slot. And I got money, exactly the amount I asked for, and nobody knew but my bank in the Netherlands. So how come we still don't know how to make how to collect and provide patient data?
Yeah.
So I think this is what frustrates me the most, because it doesn't need to be that way.
No,
and this has to do with, I think, when you asked me, do you know a topic for this podcast? I said, well, no problem is a problem. So healthcare is full of symptoms. Most patients are treated for the symptoms, because we don't always know what the exact cause of problems are. But the same goes for the process problems. In the Netherlands, maybe in the US as well, we have a huge, what they call staff shortage. But staff shortage is not a problem. It's a solution disguised as a problem. Because if you think this is the problem, then staffing is the only solution. But there's many reasons that people feel that they need more staff. And that's because they never took the time or the effort to find out what's really keeping them from treating their patients.
Yeah, Tracy and I have a phrase we've borrowed, I believe, from our colleague Mike Osterling, which is creativity before cash. So
yeah, exactly.
We see the solutions masquerading as problems and say, okay, so before we do that, how are you going to make your case, right?
Yeah,
you have
exactly.
to prove it's staffing by addressing the process first.
Yeah, precies. Whereas most people ask for, but we don't have room in the budget. But the budget itself is the problem. I call this I have it in my book as well as an introduction of how I look at healthcare. And I call this the circle of continuous misery. And the circle says that when you define your problems as money problems, like not having enough budget, then, well, of course, the only way to solve it is to cut the budget. And when you cut the budget, what happens? People get less opportunities to help patients. Less staff or less equipment or less materials, or maybe they have to wait for medication longer. So this affects the quality provided by the nurses and the doctors. Well, if quality goes down, then patients start to complain, or even worse, the inspectorate comes and they maybe take away your license or whatever could happen. And then, well, then they ask you to put in procedures and countermeasures to attack these problems. And because these are forced countermeasures, these are based on the symptoms again. So that means that they build a bureaucracy which costs money, which causes you to look at your budget and say, how am I going to pay for these countermeasures? Well, I can cut here. Well, and then you go on.
Yeah, and you go on into the circle of misery as
the circle. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's see how Tracy's laughing. So
I can't wait to read about the circle of misery. And we're already out of time, believe it or not, Arnout.
Yeah.
And so we're really excited. When would you say the book is going to be ready to release?
I can't give an exact date, but it will be this fall. I'm working on it very hard right now, together with my publisher. So the title will be Lean Thinking in Healthcare: Safe, Compassionate, Zero Waste, No Struggle. So at least then people know where my true north is at. And if people like to go for a place where it has those conditions, happy to pick up a copy as soon as it's out. I'm interestingly now currently recruiting people for my launch team. So if people are interested in that, they think I want to help share this message, well, connect to me on LinkedIn and I make sure that you will get a spot.
Well, sounds awesome. We'll be on your launch team.
Yeah, you're welcome. I will put you on.
Okay.
And then anybody who likes to know about my work in general or follow the updates on the book, you can go to leanthinkinginhealthcare.com. This is my website. You find there the new upcoming book. You find my earlier work in English, and you can follow my blog, which contains even the story about the circle of continuous misery. I couldn't keep it for myself, so
no, you must share the misery. Share the misery.
Yeah, sharing the misery, hoping that people at least feel that they need to take a step, and that there's some nurses or doctors that listen to this and they say, "Okay, I'm gonna take the lead."
Wonderful, and we will provide links for our listeners to connect with you.
Yes, please do so.
Great work and exciting about the book this fall, Arnout, and wonderful to get to meet up with you and hope to see you again at the cafe.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Be sure to register for our October 13th webinar featuring Costco wholesale industries and their wildly successful use of idea boards with Costco presenters Carlos Vallejo, Ruben Fuentes, and Steffi Bragado. You'll hear all about the details of how this program works the Costco way.
So we are very psyched to have your company. The Just in Time Cafe is packed with members of our fabulous community, and we love building and growing that community too.
I agree. Join us next month and every single month for your jolt of lean caffeine.